Franken Castle is a beacon of hope for Marvel Contest of Champions. Now, long-term viewers of my channel may be thinking, well, Matty, aren't you being a little bit biased here? Because you went really hard on champions like Kittl and Mr. Knight for having mechanics in their kit or a rotation that leads to them taking damage, right? And Franken Castle has the same sort of thing going on, but you're being really lenient. And I have a few things to say to that. The first thing is, the footage you're about to see in this video shows me electing to get smacked, gaining the rage debuff, and then throwing off my massive SB1 burst. You don't need to do that. You don't need to get smacked. You can elect not to get smacked. The most important thing is you throw off your big SB1 burst while unstoppable, so you gain the maximum benefit from your Berserk passives, right? That's the most important thing. The second thing I want to say to that is the damage you're going to see me take in this video is heavily exaggerated by virtue of him being a 3-star, right? The damage you see me taking is an awful lot more damage than you would take if you were to take a 7-star Franken Castle into competitive content like Battlegrounds or Alliance War or ACT content. It looks a lot worse than it actually is. And the third thing I want to say to that is that I want this video to be an analysis on what the community values in a champion, and just essentially what makes a champion good. What makes a champion desirable to us today in the Big 25. And it all comes down to Battlegrounds. It all comes down to Battlegrounds, right? This season is Battlegrounds' 3rd anniversary. Happy birthday. You're not what you were. You're not what you were, mate. I have, for a very long time, been a strong defender of Battlegrounds being the best thing to happen to Marvel Contest of Champions. And I stand by that, right? Just purely in terms of game design. You want repeatability, and you want it to be addictive, right? And that's exactly what Battlegrounds is. When content right now, at some point in the game, is running a bit dry, you can hop online, have an adrenaline-filled 10 minutes, desperately trying to beat the other guy, right? And you can do that 24/7, 365. That's why I love Battlegrounds, that's why I think it's the best thing to happen to MCOC. But what could possibly go wrong with a system like that? What could possibly go wrong when you make a game mode like that your premier game mode? The company that run this game, Kabam, they're going to hyper-monetize it. They're going to hyper-monetize it and center basically the entire champion design around that game mode. What does that look like in practice? You get ridiculous defenders, you buy the ridiculous defenders that murk everybody on defense, and in order to not take either unavoidable damage or exceptionally difficult to avoid damage, you need to buy the cures to those diseases. That's what happens. And it's left us in quite a bad state, as we've just seen from the rebalance notes, which are just hilarious. Essentially, you end up selling a champion that you know is too far, and you need to rebalance them, but you can't bring yourself to rebalance them because people spent so much money to get them, and everything's fucked. Everything's fucked in terms of champion design right now. So we know where that path leads us. We know where that path leads us. And essentially, where the community places value on a champion nowadays is, like, is this character going to nuke people in 20 seconds on Battlegrounds attack? And are they going to stop everybody and their nan on defense? Right? And I'll tell you what, Franken Castle doesn't fit into either of those categories. Right? Franken Castle is not a Koye. He's not Bastion, he's not Juggernaut, he's not Cull Obsidian. Unfortunately, he's just not. He's also not a serpent-level threat on defense. He's just not a defender. I'm sorry. He's not a defender. He's not Onslaught. He's not Dark Phoenix. He's not Yelena Belova. He's not Bullseye. So where does he fit in this? Well, the community is most likely going to, I would say, underrate him, right, at release. I think there have been a few videos saying he's great, and a few videos saying, you know what, he's not the best, right? And that first impression is going to matter. That first impression is definitely going to matter. So where does that leave Franken Castle? Well, he's mid, he's bad, he's not going to get used, and he's not going to have any value placed on him by the community at all. Franken Castle, you know, while he's versatile, I believe it was Trappy showed him taking like defenders like Dust and Arnim Zola, on top of obviously his target matchups being auto-blocking science defenders, MODOK, and High Evolutionary. You know, that's a lot of value. That's a lot of value. But he's not the best thing since sliced bread on offense, and he's not a defender. Franken Castle instead belongs to a different future. Franken Castle is good and is fun by virtue of who he is and his uniqueness. Franken Castle is a zombie with a V8 strapped to his back who takes his left arm off to then beat the defender to death with during his SB2. Name another champion in the game that can do that. None. Right? None. And I believe that should be where Marvel Contest of Champions goes. Right? And that's where it should always have gone. You know, and I'm wrong. I was wrong. You know, the months and years have gone past where I believe that, you know, Battlegrounds is it, and we make champions that are good and interesting for Battlegrounds. But we've seen where that goes. And hey, I was wrong. You know? And there are people in the community who think, oh, well, I was right. I've always thought Battlegrounds was bad, and you know, Battlegrounds brain rot is awful, and we need to enjoy the game. Yeah, you're also wrong. You're also wrong because Battlegrounds has so much to offer. I believe Battlegrounds is brilliant, and people were wrong to write off Battlegrounds, right? With proper management, with proper balancing, I believe Battlegrounds can thrive and live as an essential part of MCOC, but not the defining part of MCOC. Franken Castle belongs to that future. Franken Castle belongs in a world where all characters are essentially balanced around the same power level, and we pick and choose who we want to play. We pick and choose who we want to play. And, you know, I don't believe we're going to see that future. The mistakes of the past are here to stay, as I'm sure it's pretty clear from the rebalancing notes. Dark Phoenix isn't going anywhere. Serpent isn't going anywhere. Name a 5/5 defender and their respective cures, they're not going anywhere. And just the existence of these champions alone means that meta is here to stay. And you would be saying right now, well, Matty, that's all well and good, but look, this is just fundamentally not possible. You say they hyper-monetize it like it's a bad thing. They need to hyper-monetize it. Kabam fundamentally runs a business. The game is a business and it needs to make money. So how else are they going to make money if they don't sell champions that are more powerful and therefore worth buying? And remember, I'm talking about how we as a community value champions and what is considered good and desirable. Right now, as a result of the way Kabam designed their characters, as a result of their policies towards Battlegrounds and the community expectations, you're absolutely right. A champion like Franken Castle, as I said, is going to be underrated. He's going to be seen as mid because he doesn't fit into this picture. But what if we could shift our attitude and our expectations away from Battlegrounds-centric ideas? What if we could live in a world where we actually abide by the tagline of this game, come play with your favourite Marvel characters? What if what made a character appealing and worth buying was that they are unique, was that he is a zombie with a V8 strapped to his back and he takes his arm off to beat the opponent to death with? What if that was where we placed value? That is the future where Franken Castle belongs, right? Where I don't need to use Okoye because she takes so many more matchups so much faster. I can take Franken Castle because he's cool and because I prefer using him over Okoye. I'm having an awful lot more fun seeing and playing Franken Castle than I am playing with Okoye. That's just me. Other people may love Okoye. You know, I'm not saying I don't like Okoye. I definitely like Okoye. I really love Franken Castle though. I think he's tremendously cool. And yeah, there are so many characters that could be added like this. I know interest in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is at an all-time low right now. They've really written themselves into a corner since Endgame. It has not been brilliant. But, I mean, you could release Stormbreaker Thor. You could release Endgame Mjolnir-wielding Captain America, Iron Spider. So many characters people would love to play by virtue of them being who they are and not because they're a counter to Yelena Belova. Not because they're a counter to Onslaught, or Bullseye, or Serpent, or Dark Phoenix, but because they're a zombie who shoots flames out of their shoulders, right? I want that. I want that. And hey, look, let me know if you think this is, even worth saying, if you think this is interesting, if you think I got anything wrong, or if you agree with me. You know, I think this is an interesting topic, at least to make a small video about. That, for me, is why Franken Castle is a beacon of hope. Just a reminder that Kabam does still know how to make a character like this. A character that works. You know, he's not the most broken thing in the world offensively. He is not a serpent-level threat defensively, but he's reliable, he's dependable, and he's unique and interesting by virtue of him being a zombie with a V8 strapped to his back, with flames coming out of his arse, and he takes his arm off to beat his opponents to death with. All of those things are what sets Frank apart from the other characters that we've had so far this year. You know, Franken Castle, he works. Keep making champions like that. See, I can be positive. I can be positive. Now, I thought it would be nice to end this video with Frank versus Frank. So we got Franken Castle versus OG Punisher, and I have been talking about Franken Castle in a rather holistic sense so far through this video. So let's get concrete with his rotation. Franken Castle, what you want to do is weave in your heavy attack whenever you can to apply Incinerate debuffs up to a max of 4. Then you build to your SP2 to apply 8 Incinerates to the opponent every single time. And every single hit of your SP2 will grant you a Berserk passive, which will increase your attack rating while you are unstoppable. As you can see, the damage output is very, very respectable. Now, Franken Castle will never idle. He will always walk towards the opponent, and when he does, he goes passively unstoppable. So what you want to do is chuck off that SP2, trigger the unstoppable, land a combo, and then chuck off the SP1 for, as you just saw, super boosted SP1 bursts, and Punisher goes down in just under a minute. Every single one of the opponents you've seen him take today, just under a minute, and that is just about all I have for you today. This has taken about 100 takes, as you can probably imagine. It's quite a complicated point to get across, but if you have made it this far, then congratulations, you have an attention span greater than that of a goldfish. And go away.